Welcome to a haunting tale with Whisper Dark. Today, we step inside the White House, the most powerful residence in the world, to uncover a chilling haunting that has terrified presidents, staff, and visitors for over a century and a half. This is no ordinary ghost story. This is the tale of Willie Lincoln, a 10-year-old girl who died within these very walls and refuses to leave. Most people have heard of Abraham Lincoln's ghost wandering the halls of the White House, but few know about his daughter Vilma, whose spirit has been stirring fear and wonder since the 1850s, from gentle touches on shoulders to vivid apparitions that left grown adults speechless. Vilma's presence has been felt by everyone from White House staff to presidents' families. What makes this story so spine-chilling isn't just that it's about a child's ghost, it's the reality and persistence of her hauntings. We're talking about documented encounters spanning decades, witnessed by everyone from military aides to first ladies. These aren't mere folklore or urban legends. These are recorded experiences that have shaped the supernatural reputation of America's most iconic home. At the beginning of Vilma's haunting, to understand Vilma's story, we must go back to 1852, when the American Civil War was at its peak. The nation was tearing itself apart, and President Abraham Lincoln was fighting to hold it together. Amid this chaos, a personal tragedy struck the Lincoln family. Vilma Lincoln was the second daughter of Abraham and Mary Todd Lincoln, and by all accounts, she was her father's favorite. Friends and family described Vilma as cheerful, lively, and remarkably intelligent for her age. She shared a deep bond with her father, one that went beyond the typical parent-child relationship. Abraham Lincoln, a tall, somber man carrying the weight of a fractured nation, would light up with joy whenever his daughter was near. During the Lincoln years, the White House was not the fortified stronghold it is today. It was more like a large family home where children could play freely in the halls, laugh in the rooms, and make noise without much restriction. Vilma and her younger sister Edna turned the presidential mansion into their playground. They raced through corridors, slid down banisters, and treated the most important building in America like any other home where children lived and played. But in February 1852, everything changed. Vilma and Edna both fell ill with what doctors believed was typhoid fever. The illness struck suddenly and fiercely. One day, the girls were running through the halls, and the next, they were bedridden, weakened by fever and unable to sit up. Medicine in those days was primitive compared to today, and such an illness could be a death sentence. Doctors tried everything they knew, but their treatments were limited. For days, Abraham and Mary took turns sitting by their daughters' bedsides, watching, waiting, and praying. The president, tasked with saving a nation, was powerless to save his own children. Edna, the younger sister, slowly began to recover. Her fever broke, and she started eating again. But Vilma's condition worsened. She grew weaker each day, her breathing more labored, her skin paler. On February 20th, 1852, 10-year-old Vilma Lincoln died in the White House, in the very room where she had played and laughed just weeks before. The room that once echoed with her laughter was now filled with the silence of death. Abraham Lincoln was so devastated by this loss that he locked himself away for days, barely able to function as president. White House staff reported hearing his sobs behind closed doors. The man meant to lead the nation through its darkest hour was drowning in his own grief. But Mary Todd Lincoln took Vilma's death the hardest. She was so shattered that she could hardly speak for weeks. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, and became indifferent to everything except the daughter she had lost. In her desperation, she turned to spiritualism and seances, which were gaining popularity during the Civil War. When traditional religion failed to comfort her, she sought answers from the spirit world. Seances in the White House. Mary began holding seances in the White House's Red Room, now used for official receptions, but then a place where a grieving mother tried to reach her daughter's spirit. Mediums would dim the lights, join hands around a table, and call out to Vilma's spirit. They claimed they could feel her presence, hear her voice, and even see her ghostly form. Mary told friends and family that Vilma appeared at the foot of her bed at night, looking just as she had in life, wearing the same clothes, with the same innocent smile. But her eyes, Mary said, carried a sadness that had never been there before. These nighttime visits became regular for Mary. She would wake in the darkness to see Vilma standing there, sometimes reaching out as if wanting to speak, but unable to find the words. These visits were both comforting and terrifying. Mary was grateful to see her daughter again, but seeing her as a ghost was a constant reminder that she was gone forever. Vilma's lingering spirits. After Abraham Lincoln's assassination in 1865, strange occurrences began in the White House. Staff reported unexplained sounds, eerie feelings, and the sense that someone was watching them. Some of these experiences seemed tied to a young girl. During Ulysses S. Grant's presidency in the 1870s, the reports became more specific and far more unsettling. Staff claimed they saw Vilma Lincoln's ghost wandering the halls, playing in empty rooms, and appearing in doorways before vanishing into thin air. The sightings followed a consistent pattern. Staff members would be working when they caught a glimpse of a girl out of the corner of their eye. When they turned to look, there was Vilma, clear as day. looking just like her old photographs, staring with sad blue eyes before fading away like mist. The most astonishing encounter came from a man everyone called James. James was a legendary White House employee who worked there for over 30 years, starting in the late 1860s during Grant's administration. He served as a footman, butler, cook, doorman, and even the official duster. James was known throughout Washington for his storytelling. He stood at the White House's north entrance, greeting visitors and sharing tales that seemed too incredible to be true. But James insisted his ghost stories were real. He claimed to have had actual conversations with Vilma's spirit. These encounters happened in the evenings when he was alone, cleaning or organizing. Vilma would appear, looking like a normal girl, except for being slightly translucent and glowing faintly. James said she was polite and curious, asking what he was doing and who the current president was. He noted that Vilma's spirit retained the innocence and intelligence she had in life. She asked about her parents and seemed confused about the passage of time, unaware that she was no longer alive. The terrifying era of the shadow reports of Vilma's presence continued after James's encounters, but the most terrifying period began in 1900 during William Howard Taft's presidency. The staff began experiencing something new and far more frightening, which they called the shadow. It became one of the most documented supernatural events in White House history. Unlike other ghosts that were seen or heard, the shadow was felt, making it infinitely more unsettling. Staff reported feeling a gentle pressure on their shoulders while working alone on the upper floors, as if someone were leaning over to see what they were doing, like a curious child peeking over your shoulder. These experiences were so vivid that the entire staff lived in constant fear. They associated it with a young girl, possibly Vilma, still playing in the home she knew as the president's daughter. The touches were gentle, almost playful, which made them even more eerie. Staff described it as a child seeking attention, unaware that touching without being seen would frighten people. These incidents were frequent and consistent, always a pressure on the shoulder, always when alone and focused on work. Major Arthur Blair, Taft's military aide, was intrigued by these reports. In July 1901, he wrote to his sister, describing the ghost as a girl of about 13 or 14 years old, known to the staff by a slight pressure on the shoulder, as if someone were leaning over to see what you might be doing. One staff member, Margaret, fainted from fear when she encountered the shadow. While working in an upstairs room, she felt the familiar pressure on her shoulder. When she turned, she came face to face with the ghostly figure of a teenage girl. The shock was so great that she collapsed. When she awoke, she described the girl with light, unkempt hair and sad blue eyes, matching Vilma's age and description. Taft's reaction, and investigation President Taft was furious about these ghost stories circulating in his White House. When Blair told him about the shadow, Taft erupted in anger, fearing the story would leak to the press and damage his reputation. He ordered Blair to warn the staff that anyone caught repeating tales of the shadow would be fired immediately. But Taft's harsh reaction only fueled curiosity. If the stories were mere superstition, why was the president so worried? Blair was secretly fascinated by the shadow. He began a quiet investigation, interviewing staff and researching White House records to identify any girls who had died there. He concluded that Wilma Lincoln was the most likely candidate for the shadow, as her age, location, and behavior matched perfectly. Tragically, Blair's investigation was never completed. In 1902, he took a trip to Europe to recover his health, as Taft had ordered him to rest due to work-related stress. But the trip turned into a tragedy. Blair boarded a ship that sank in the Atlantic, taking his research and conclusions to the ocean floor. Vilma's legacy. Vilma's hauntings continued into the 1950s during Lyndon Johnson's presidency. His daughter, Lucy, stayed in the room where Vilma had died. Initial reports claimed Lucy spoke with Vilma's ghost, but she later clarified that her research into the room's history was misinterpreted. Still, her interest in the room's past suggests something unusual about the space. What makes Wilma Lincoln's story so compelling is its consistency. For over 150 years, people have reported encounters with the young girl's spirit, blithe, curious, and gentle. Unlike her father's ghost, which appears during national crises, Vilma's spirit seems to linger randomly, as if she continues to live in the house where she died. Staff have felt her presence during routine tasks, like a child watching adults at work. The White House has many ghost stories, but Vilma is unique. She's not a president or a first lady, just a little girl who died too young and chose to stay in the only home she knew as the president's daughter. Her presence reminds us that the White House is not just a symbol of power, but a home where families have lived, loved, and lost. Today, White House staff occasionally report strange experiences attributed to Vilma. Modern security has reduced ghost sightings, but late-night workers sometimes feel watched. Vilma's story teaches us that spirits aren't always angry or vengeful. Sometimes, they're just lost children who can't leave home. The next time you see images of the White House, remember that in those historic halls, a 10-year-old girl's spirit may still be playing, still curious, still the innocent child she was before tragedy took her. Vilma's presence shows that the White House is more than a political symbol. It's a home where memories, and perhaps something more, linger. Subscribe to Whisper, like this video, and follow the channel for more haunting tales. It's free and helps us tremendously. Good night.